Welcome to Culture Night,
where each week we're doing fancy wine and watch movies that are in some way culturally significant. I'm Andrew.
and I'm Sarah, and we are back for season 3, episode 7. Mm-hmm. Still chugging along with these musicals, but having fun doing it, man.
Getting closer to the more modern ones. I guess we kind of did a more recent one.
Yeah, but that's getting really close to being 20 years ago.
God, yeah, I guess like musicals like came out during our lifetime. I think of it as like the newer ones, but like that's been a minute.
Yeah, honestly, I think most of the season has been in the 2000s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true.
Crazy.
So close. It feels so close, but it was
so close yet so very, very far.
So long ago.
All right, so I don't think I have any podcast business. Do you have any podcast business?
No new milestones this week?
No milestones. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, keep subscribing and following and doing whatnot on all of those platforms.
We appreciate you all. But now it's time to jump in what we're drinking. This week, we are drinking the
2016 Pinot Noir from the Arroyo Grande Valley by Tobin James.
Another Pinot Noir. It's been a while. I guess we haven't done one since the film noir genre.
Surprised we didn't drink all the ones we had during that season. I think we did break it up a little bit, but
you act like we have this really organized cellar where we know what we have.
Yeah, we did go like several weeks in a row with the Pinot Noir, and then I think you wanted to change it up just a little bit. But yeah, let's try this one out.
Ooh, smells very different from last week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, more of like the dark fruit raisin that I know and love so much.
We're back. Less jammy, more dark fruit, and a little bit more of earthy tones.
Oh, for sure, yeah. Still tastes pretty bright though.
Yeah, but I get some of that like bright fall spicy flavors.
Yeah.
On that first taste. It's very pleasant.
Yeah, very smooth, not super tart or alcohol forward at all. Mm-hmm. Very pleasant to drink. Not super thick, but very, very smooth.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to think of Pinot Noirs as being a thinner, clearer.
I was trying to think of like what I'm tasting there, and it's like, it's not quite like a juice like flavor, like a artificial juice or anything like that. But definitely, I can't really quite put my finger on the flavor.
I think it's just really good wine.
Yeah, it tastes like good wine.
Yeah, I'm trying to get a good look at the color. I didn't pour this one. Seems kind of, it's definitely like, not like you said, not as thick, a much more transparent looking in color and more of like a maroon, not so bright red, but delicious so far.
Yeah. All right, so are you ready to go behind the screens?
Always. It's time to go behind the screens, where each week we go behind the big screens of Hollywood and learn more about some aspect of film production or storytelling.
So this week we are exploring the role of the sound mixer, which actually is exactly what you think it is.
I thought that was going to be some kind of joke about how I was not prepared with things. Hey, I at least hit the right button.
It's not at all what you think. No, for this week, it actually is exactly what you think, but there are some interesting notes there. This information comes from masterclass.com, but the role of the sound mixer starts, in the pre-production, where they are responsible for either providing or obtaining the equipment they'll need in order to record, obviously, the audio for the movie. Microphones, windscreens, boom mics, all that sort of stuff. But they also have to go out and scout the locations to make sure that it's something that they can actually get the audio in, or that they're going to have to adapt to. Like, is it very windy there? Is there going to be a lot of like foot traffic or car traffic nearby? What are the acoustics like? All of those things.
Is it a modern restaurant that has absolutely nothing that will absorb sound and is just one giant sound?
What, echo chamber?
Echo chamber, yeah.
Yeah, all those things you have to kind of be aware of in order to make sure that they are prepared when it actually comes time for the shoot, because you don't want to be out there record this amazing scene and then the audio sounds all muddy, or a lot of like background noise kind of makes it not usable. They also then in pre-production assemble their team of boom operators, assistants, trainees, whatnot, to help monitor sound levels, help get everyone set up with microphones, help get the microphones in place during and before the shoot, setting up, and that'll help set up and tear down all the audio equipment as well. And that's all just the pre-production aspect of it. During the production, they are there on set, making sure that they are recording, obviously, like the dialogue and the important main parts of the audio. But they'll also go around at the locations and record like what they call like wild sound, just like the nearby sound of like waves crashing or insects or things for this. So they can use that like for B-roll or to include in the scene if there isn't like, that sound that they wanted, to make sure they stick
bump
around
that up in the background,
to get that up. Yeah. To kind of provide more ambiance there. And they are actually doing most of the mixing in real time because they want to actually make sure that the audio that they have is usable for what they need. They don't want to get all the way to post-production and realize that the entire sound, won't work or won't balance right or sounds off. So they're doing all of that like in real time.
And then the Foley artist comes in at the end and layers in anything else.
We'll get to that in a second.
Oh. Sorry, I was just excited because I knew something that has to do with this.
Well, I guess, I can go to that. So during post-production, the sound mixer's kind of job is done. There is a re-recording mixer and the Foley artist that we kind of mentioned in previous weeks where they're responsible for, the Foley artist, as we mentioned, is there to add like sound effects that didn't exist using all sorts of different tools and trickery to kind of replicate those sounds. And the re-recording mixer is there to either, balance the audio because, the dialogue is taken at all different locations, different times, different microphones, whatnot, making sure that everything is level and sounds right in post-production, and then re-record anything they need to like, I guess like dub over in some things or just add to the background as needed. And finally, the sound mixer is the most senior position of like that, I guess, tower.
That would make sense.
A lot of times they start as like the boom mic assistant or just like the assistant or trainee and doing a lot of the, grunt work there and kind of work their way up to this position. But it's not really seen as like a bridge to like another position. It's kind of like you work your way up to be the sound mixer and really specialize and are really passionate about the audio portion.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you what, from editing a podcast for 6 months, we do like bare minimum. The fact that we even have these microphones was a huge like step up and advancement for us. But I mean, there I think is a lot of nuance to mixing sound and audio and getting all the levels just right. And I'm sure we're not excellent in any way, shape or form. The equipment does all the work for us for the most part, but it's definitely an art for sure. It's definitely
something that people don't really appreciate unless it's done pretty terribly. And I think lately a lot of sound mixers have kind of like gotten a lot of heat because people are complaining because they can't hear the dialogue in a lot of the shows that they're watching. And I think that is not necessarily the sound mixer's fault because they are like for movies, they're balancing the sound to sound really good in like a movie theater, full on, 7.1 or more like surround sound system and all that has all those channels. But people are watching these on their like cheap, super thin flat screen TV in their room that has, no, acoustic dampening materials and whatnot. And so,
us.
And so you've got, well, now we have like a surround sound system
yes,
here.
Yeah, we're getting better. It was pretty bad.
Dedicated for that dialogue. And when you have that, you can hear the sound perfectly and it sounds way better. But when it's all condensed into these tiny, super thin little speakers that are basically projecting straight into your wall, it's going to be hard to hear all those nuance with all the other stuff going on there. So I don't think that sound mixers have like gone away or gotten worse. I think it's just more the fault of these super thin TVs that people don't have the appropriate like speakers for hearing it, how it was meant to be, how it was meant to sound. Yeah,
that definitely makes sense. Yeah, it's definitely a position that I appreciate a lot more now than I did a couple months ago, but good on them. I'm sure that's a very skilled position that you'd have to have, especially all the like the stuff you don't even think about, like you said, the acoustics and the pre-work before you even get to the scene of what do we need to add here to absorb sound so that you can hear this or do X, Y, Z. I think that's also fascinating. Yeah, got to work with like all the set designers and coordinators and everything to make sure that like, hey, could we record somewhere else instead because we'll be able to get better audio. It's definitely an important thing to kind of note early. Yep. And so now it is time to move into Slept on It for last week's movie, which was Rent. And does your rating change after sleeping on it? You rated it a 7.3 and I rated it a 6.1. I don't think so. I think I was, pretty high with the 7.3 and I don't think it goes any higher or lower. I really enjoyed the movie. We didn't listen to the soundtrack as much this week as I thought we would. We've been so busy. There has not been time. This week has flown by. I feel like just yesterday we were recording last week's episode. But I think I'm pretty happy with the 7.3 there, but I'm interested to hear your thoughts. Yes, I am definitely bumping it up probably to a 7. I was between 7 and 7.1, but 7 feels good. I do think it has big cultural significance for its time, and I think long-term just being a voice for a lot of people that didn't have a voice at the time of the original musical coming out and then the movie coming out. I still just, the fact that there's just so much songs and less dialogue, that's hard for me to follow in a movie. So
like a little break between there.
Yeah, I don't love that. And I wish we'd put like captions on or something so that I could have followed what was going on. So I kind of felt a little lost. So that was more in the storytelling aspect of it. But I think from a like cultural standpoint, and it does have great songs. The cast was really great. I think that you could tell they like really felt their roles deep. That 7 is where I'm at now.
Yeah, I felt like for the first half of the movie, like I said, I was really struggling to keep up with what was going on. I had like just enough context to really follow it, but I was by the end of the movie, it all kind of came together and was pretty obvious like what was happening or what had happened.
Mm-hmm. So are you ready for some behind the scenes info, fun facts, deep dives, all the things that I have?
I am.
All right. So one of the things we talked about while we were watching the movie and during the podcast was that they say the word rent a lot in the movie. And I looked it up and I couldn't find it definitively, but I think it's said only around 25 times.
Really?
And that's just from the script. So I don't know if that counts like the chorus of people saying like rent, 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 like all at the same time. If it's just like,
Just put it there as one time.
Like other rent. But as far as like find and replace, it was about 25 times. So I would have said like 125 times.
Yeah, for sure. Especially in even just the first like couple minutes.
And then we also talked about like what the cultural significance of this movie was and just like looking into it some more. And Emily Lancaster from Western Kentucky University wrote a thesis statement on the cultural significance of Rent. And I just liked her quote that was in the like abstract of the thesis. It said, Rent gave struggling artists, drag queens, and those suffering from HIV/AIDS a voice during a time in which they were being pushed aside and disposed of by the mainstream media. And I think, going along to what I just said and what we were talking about last week, that, that was stuff that was probably it's definitely not a common theme in the Broadway theater productions where this started from, and is becoming more of something that we're giving voice to in the 2020s. But back in the early mid 90s and 2000s was not something that was prevalent.
I feel like it was, it was definitely like not okay to really make movies or talk about like being gay or HIV or AIDS like at that time at all. So like have all of that all in one movie, was very, a big deal, I guess, to try to break those barriers.
Definitely. And then one other quote that I read that I thought was really interesting. I believe this was from an interview from Esquire magazine 20 years after, it's not been 20 years, 20 years after the the Broadway production came out. A musical that was once shocking and groundbreaking is now tame enough for live television production, and that's proof of its mainstream success. Because I think they did a live stream on in 2019. So something that was probably very outrageous at the time that they're now just like doing it on an ABC or whatever is crazy. We've come a long way, a lot of work to do, but I think that this definitely stands firm in the cultural zeitgeist. Is that a word?
Sure. Sounds right to me.
Oh man, I keep making up these words and you're not confirming whether or not they're real. So.
I definitely know the word zeitgeist, and I think that kind of applies there.
Yeah. And then we talked a lot about Disney princesses because Idina Menzel goes on to become Elsa, and we were incorrect. Elsa and Anna are not official Disney princesses.
Really?
Yep. I read a couple different things that whether like they both end up becoming Queen of Arendelle, so they are not actually princesses. And then also the Frozen franchise is so large that they didn't need to be grouped into the princesses because like Olaf and Kristoff and like all those other characters are big with them. So they are kind of their own unit. So that means that Idina Menzel and Sarah Silverman are in the same category of unofficial Disney princesses with Sarah Silverman's Wreck-It Ralph category. I
don't know how I feel about that. I consider them all Disney princesses, but
Disney princess is it's a tough club to get into. Sophia and Elena of Avalor are also not official Disney princesses. And then
too exclusive for my taste.
Right. A couple more behind the scenes things. In an interview with Chris Columbus, he mentioned that he at one point was talking about hiring Justin Timberlake, Christina Aguilera, Beyonce, and Alicia Keys to star in the movie.
Wow.
What a different movie it would have been.
Yeah, I think it would have taken away some of the, focus on the actual topics by having that many. Obviously, Idina Menzel is a big name now, but I don't think she was at the time. Would have taken some focus away from that and been more around like, hey, we're just going to ignore the lyrics and look at these actors. I do love that they had most of the actual Broadway performers doing it.
I do too, and I think you could just tell that it meant a lot to them, and that they knew those characters. They've been doing it forever, and I think, although I would love to have seen a version with all of those big name singers, but I don't think it would have been the cultural phenomenon that it is today without that. And then just couple quick notes about Jonathan Larson, who is the man that wrote the Broadway production. He it started as a play that was just intended to be read through on stage. It was not a production of acting and stuff. It was more of a we're telling the story kind of theater show. It was not a Broadway production. And then after a 3-year collaboration, it got moved into the off-Broadway category. And tragically, the night before it was to premiere in off-Broadway, he died suddenly of aortic dissection.
Yikes.
And he'd apparently been going to the doctor and stuff, and he was misdiagnosed at 2 different hospitals. And they believe that if he had been diagnosed correctly, he would have lived. But he was only 35 years old.
Yikes.
So, I kept reading he tragically died the night before, and I was honestly expecting suicide or something, or just the way it was being portrayed, and then to see that he was 35 and just something was wrong and nobody caught it in time, and he never got to see the actual musical full performance of it on stage with the crowd. And they cast actually with the blessing of his parents. They were I don't know, do we even go on to perform? And they said that they were just going to sit at tables and read it and sing while sitting down, because they just didn't know they had the heart in it. But by the time they got to one of the first songs, they were in full character, no costumes, no props or anything. They were just performing it just because they felt these parts so deeply and wanted to do it for him. But
man, that's intense.
Definitely a tragic story to go along with another. The story itself of Rent is pretty tragic in so many ways, but
adds to it.
Yeah, we still loved it. It just, again, so sad, but just left me with this cozy feeling of family comfort.
It was a Christmas movie after all, right?
Yes. Survey says Christmas movie.
Christmas, yeah.
So that's all I have on Rent. Any other thoughts?
I don't think so.
Yeah. So let's move into tonight. What are we watching tonight?
Tonight we are watching Hairspray from 2007, and it is rated PG.
So are you ready to go back into the time machine?
Yeah, I thought you were pressing that. So let's hop into our time machine. We are heading back to 2007. The top 3 movies released that year were Spider-Man. I believe we've done a movie in 2007 before. No, sorry, this is Spider-Man 3. Yeah. Spider-Man 3 grossing $336 million. Shrek the Third, good year for the third movies, grossing $322 million. And Transformers grossing $319 million. Thanks.
So I put the top 5 in there because I just needed to point out that Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, Harry Potter number 5, was 5th of those movies, and Shrek the Third was in 2nd place. Did that many people really need to see the 3rd movie in the Shrek franchise?
Yeah, it's crazy because Harry Potter came out in July. It's not like it came out end of the year. These all kind of came out between May and July. And it's also had another Pirates of the Caribbean in there.
It was a pretty stacked year for movies.
Yeah.
But apparently Shrek the Third was a big box office hit.
They were all close though. The first was $336 million, and the 5th was $292 million. That's wild, but I'm still shocked that Harry Potter did not crush through all of those. Just shows that people, I guess, like superhero movies with Spider-Man 3. The top 3 songs released that year were "Irreplaceable" by Beyonce. Am I saying that right? Oh my God. By Beyonce. "Umbrella" by Rihanna featuring Jay-Z, and "The Sweet Escape" by Gwen Stefani featuring Akon.
I also used all my self-control to just not copy and paste the top 20 songs because all of them I was like, yes. I'm certain I spent 99 cents on iTunes for every single one of the top 25 hits of 2007.
It's just an era of bangers only for sure.
Yeah. It was a great year for music and movies.
Yeah, love all those songs. But back to Hairspray. Have you seen it before?
More times than I can even tell you. I am about to throw up. I'm so excited.
Well, I have not seen it. And I know pretty much nothing about the movie.
Yeah, I was going to ask. I didn't know if you had any context for it. Also, I just need it to be known. I'm way more excited for this than I was for The Music Man. The Music Man was more of middle school nostalgia. This movie, oh my God, I love it so much.
I have heard of it a lot more. I honestly have no idea what to expect, though.
You don't want to give any kind of guesses?
I imagine it has something to do with a girl that wants to be a famous singer, and she puts on hairspray to kind of get our confidence.
All right.
That's what it is.
We'll find out.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm excited for this one. It's I can't even say anything because I'm afraid I'm going to say too much. I love this movie. And I will also go on record as saying as I did see it in theaters in 2007. So I was and I saw Harry Potter. So I was contributing all of my money to.
So your dollars are actually in those figures we quoted there.
Right there. I did not see Shrek the Third or Spider-Man or any of the other ones, but I did see these two movies that came out, I think, a week apart. If I were, I'm going to go on record as saying as I believe this movie came out July 20th, 2007. And
it's not on there on the list.
I know.
Top 5.
Just saying, because it was like 2007 for me. It was like Harry Potter came out in July. I think this says July 11th. Hairspray came out. I want to say it was July 20th, 2007. And High School Musical 2 premiered, I want to say August 17th of 2007. So it was like a summer of like all of my favorite things.
And then the iPhone came out and Twitter started back when it was Twitter. Big year, 2007.
Man. Oh man, I was wondering about I was thinking about iPods with talking about iTunes, but the iPhone thrown in there too, man.
But without further ado, let's jump into Hairspray.
Can't wait.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Hairspray.
Sorry, I love it so much. It's like so nostalgic for me. I was texting my friends from high school the whole time. Oh, I just love it so much.
It was certainly.
Was it at all? No, I'm sorry. We'll get into it. Jump into the wine.
It was a musical for sure. Wow.
I'm calm now. Let's talk about the wine.
Let's talk about the wine scale first. So the wine scale is a 0 to 10 scale. 10 obviously being the best thing in the world. 0, however, does not necessarily mean that it's a bad wine, because all the wines we drink on the show are very good wines. So just because it has a low score does not mean it is bad. We just wanted to have a wider range of scores so that everything was in between like the 9.0 and 10 scale. So that being said, this wine, the 2019 Pinot Noir from Arroyo Grande Valley.
Do you want me to go first? In Paso Robles?
In Paso Robles. What would you give it?
I'm going to give it a 5.2.
I was going to give it a 5.6.
Close. I was gonna go 5, but it was still it was not bad in any way. Again, I feel like I say this every week. It's not bad, but they're not bad. Yeah. They're all so good.
It fluctuated. It didn't do too much for me. I mean,
it felt like it was very steady. It was good. It was not crazy complex. It didn't have a lot of hidden crazy flavors. It was just.
It didn't change much as we drank it. It was very good. I got some more of and it sounds stupid, some grape flavor. This wine's made from grapes, but some more of that. I almost feel in a good way, like the Big League Chew or the grape snow cone, some of that nostalgic grape flavor that I was like, you know what, it's good, but it's not amazing. It didn't have super complex notes to it. But I think most people who drink wine would very, very much enjoy that.
That was very good. Again, I feel like I'm not a big normal Pinot Noir girl, but the Tobin James Pinot Noirs have all been very solid.
Yeah.
I'm here for it.
Solid. Next up is the movie rating out of 10. This one's a bit more subjective. I will go first with this one. I generally rate my movies on on 4 main criteria, being how much did I enjoy it, how rewatchable is it, if it was on, how likely would I be to just pick it up where it was on the channel and finish watching it, and how quotable is it, which in this season, more how quotable is it is how likely am I to listen to the soundtrack and have that blasting in our house. And
he has those criteria, and I always am what is my gut feeling when the movie ends?
From the hip.
Until he then goes over his criteria, and I'm like,
second guess,
maybe I need to readjust it.
Third
so
guess,
that's
guess.
How we are different.
Yeah. In this one, I'm giving it a 6.1. Oh
man, that makes me feel good. I feel like some of the ones I've loved, you've really hated. That 6 I feel like is solid. I'm gonna give it a 7.5.
Only a 7. You almost cry. You were talking about how much you love this movie.
I do, but I also I've seen Forrest Gump, and that I think is the pinnacle of what we are looking for from this podcast. And I love it. It is so I can't even talk about it. It is so deeply nostalgic for me and my friends. We loved this movie so much, but I also realized that it's not like the best movie. I don't think it is the best movie ever. I think the soundtrack is phenomenal. Like,
it's good.
Definitely one of the best ones we've listened to. Just give me this week so we can listen to it on repeat, and then you'll love it.
Weekend, you have the whole week to change my subplanet score.
Okay. Challenge accepted.
Like, I thought the soundtrack was good. I don't know how memorable it was because a lot of the songs, like, they were good in their moment, but it's not like I distinctly remember a particular song that I'm like, oh yeah, that was a banger. Let's go back and listen to that one again.
I mean, I will say I have not watched this movie or listened to the soundtrack in a while. And this morning, before I knew we were watching it tonight, I was like, oh, I'll just like listen through the soundtrack a little bit. And instantly I was like, I forgot about the song. Oh my God, I love the song. Oh my God, this one. Oh my God, this one. And I had my AirPods in and our poor children were like, what is mom doing? Because I was like, yes.
Is mom having a seizure or something? What is she doing?
Debatably.
Why is she moving like that?
our baby especially was like, what is going on? But I will say there was more song to dialogue ratio than I remembered, which I don't love still. Knowing the soundtrack backwards and forwards, I can follow the whole story. Having seen it a jillion times, it doesn't bother me as much. But there was a lot more songs than I remembered.
I mean, I prefer a heavier like song to dialogue ratio.
I think just because songs tend to be more fast paced and it's harder to follow what's going on for me.
They also are dancing and showing what's going on. It's a bit easier. You don't have to listen to every single word.
You also listen to things on triple speed. Right.
But I also, I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, I get like, it can be a lot when a show is just, or a movie is all songs. You don't get that mental break to like sit there and think of like what you just like, processed or what you just heard. That I did kind of, I like the ones that are like a 90-10 split on the music to dialogue.
Yeah.
It's what I'm learning from this season.
Look at us. We're learning and growing.
Getting cultured.
Yes. All right.
Right in front of our eyes.
Are you ready to move into the movie description?
No. I started panicking about this about like 3/4 of the way through. I'm like, how do I even describe this? It's a girl in, I guess, the 50s in Baltimore. 60s.
Welcome to the 60s.
60s, you're right. They mentioned the 50s at one point. In the 60s in Baltimore, and she is in love with dancing, and there's a dancing show that she wants to be on. There's a lot of racial undertones in how like there is like a specific day where black dancers can be on, but like it's not. It feels very much like obviously the whole segregation undertones of that, keeping that apart. She tries to break down the barriers, and in the end, they dance their way to a black hairspray queen. Is that what they call it? Hairspray, Miss Hairspray, to break down those barriers and integrate the show.
Well done. There's a lot. I mean, it's a lot deeper than you. Especially you were giving your expectations of this, and I was like, "There's a lot of layers here that we're gonna unpack." So
yeah, definitely a lot going. Why don't you read your cheat sheet there?
Oh, jeez, the first phrase already has me laughing.
Whenever you're ready.
Give me a second. I don't know why it's so hard for me every time.
You have the easiest job. You just have to read words.
I know, but when it starts off with pleasantly plump teenager, I don't know how you're expecting me not to laugh. Okay. Pleasantly plump teenager Tracy Turnblad auditions to be on Baltimore's most popular dance show, The Corny Collins Show, and lands a prime spot. Through her newfound fame, she becomes determined to help her friends and end the racial segregation that has been a staple of the show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But can we go back to her name is Tracy Turnblad? It's like they decided to make a really unnecessarily tricky name. Turnblad.
Well, her name is Tracy Turnblad and her best friend is Penny Pingleton. And her mom loves to say P words. If you like pay attention, she's talking about like she wants her pleats pressed in her laundry and like everything her mom said is very like alliteration heavy.
Yeah. Got a lot of plosives there. I just think Turnblad. Like you're making a movie, a show, a story, and you're coming up with character names. Why Turnblad? Apologies to anyone whose name is actually Turnblad. It just seems like an unnecessarily like tongue twister name. Anyways, just I hadn't really like thought about it until I saw it written out there.
It's a tough one.
was the movie what you expected? Obviously, you've seen it a lot.
Yes.
Not quite. To an extent, figured about it dancing, a lot of like, I need to work my way onto this show, movie, set, cast, whatever, to get there. I thought the Hairspray would be much more front and center on this and did not expect all of the segregation and integration backstories.
Were you expecting the 1960s setting?
No, I guess I was expecting more like 80s.
Okay. I can see that.
Thinking like hair metal, like, Hairspray, like just being out of that era.
But hair metal, you got to be able to let your hair run free. Hairspray.
I don't know. It's like, this is the hair that I have. I don't really ever use Hairspray. I don't really know its use, why, or how to use it.
Hairspray holds it in place. Your hair does not move when you use hairspray.
Back in college, one of our friends sprayed with a big, sexy hair.
Big sexy hair
in my hair, and I just remember being like, oh God, is this going to like permanently alter the hair that I have, and being afraid of that. I have no idea what Hairspray does or how it works.
It just holds your hair in place, especially if you have straight hair. When you're trying to curl it, you want to use Hairspray because it will hold the curls, and especially with the like ratting of the hair to get it to stand up and have the curl at the bottom. You want that. They wanted it very stiff, so when they were dancing and moving around, that hair did not move.
Gotcha. I just don't shower for a couple of days, and then it kind of like moves like the way and stays the way I want it.
Boys are weird, man.
Different ways to do the same thing. How well did this movie age? Again, a time period piece.
The musicals are period pieces.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they are all about a decade or a period of time. Chicago in the 20s, this in the 60s, Grease in the 50s, Music Man in the early 1900s, Oklahoma in the early 1900s. Like, they are all capturing their time capsule movies.
Everyone wants to go to a different time period and just kind of like dance their way through it.
We're trying to turn a really bad, horrible history into slightly pleasant history.
Make everything sound like it was so upbeat
by dancing and singing.
Yeah, to take a really heavy topic and then make
it
seem all bright.
Rent in the 80s with
especially that
AIDS. Like, I guess we have to sing through what's tough.
It's one way to get through a topic, I guess. Now everyone wants these really dark biopics and like covering really heavy things with a lot of like emotion. I guess in the 2000s especially, everyone wanted to kind of just dance their way through it and sing their way, so they didn't have to really kind of address
smile and sing,
I guess. It aged well, I thought. Zac Efron looked like he was about 6 years old, but everyone else aged, I guess. Could the movie be made today?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's about a certain period of time. I mean, I will say when this came out, I was like, oh, we're so beyond all of this. Wrong.
Yeah, definitely not. Definitely a lot of those undertones still existing today, and a lot of those issues, especially. But I don't think the subject matter could have been made today, and I think they very much could make just a modern day remake, and it wouldn't seem out of place by any means.
Definitely.
Did they say the title of the movie in the movie?
Yes.
A whole bunch of times. Now, I'm just honestly not as many times as I thought. I honestly thought, like I said, the Hairspray product would be featured more often. It was definitely heavily featured in the beginning and a little bit towards the end.
And I think it was kind of a lot more like subtle in the background. Like someone was almost always spraying their hair like before a take of the Corny Collins show or in the hallway at school. Mm-hmm. There was always like a little bit of that in the background of a lot of scenes. But
yeah,
the title has always been weird for me because I know we're going to go into, does the title fit the movie?
Mm-hmm.
I think like these Broadway shows, they just want a one word, Oklahoma, Rent, Chicago, Hairspray. Like they like those like short, concise titles.
Yeah. And it fits fine, I guess. I can't think of a better name off the top of my head for this one.
It would have to be really long to like really cover the very long, deep meanings of this.
It's got to be like a really like a several word title to get that. And I can see that really wanted to focus on just the Hairspray aspect of it.
And I think that very much defines that decade of the 60s of, hair was a big deal and the wardrobe, which I'll get into later.
I guess, does it fit when you think of it, the Hairspray? It's like something you apply on top to kind of make everything seem perfect when it's really not, and hold that in place and hold on to that.
Ooh.
Is that the deeper meaning there?
Ooh, getting deep.
With all this, it's like trying to hide all the imperfections of like society and have everyone hold this pose so that everything looks perfect in that moment, but that it's all fake.
Nailed it. Got it.
So that's what they were going for.
100%. Move on. Next question.
Were there any actors that went on to do bigger things?
I would say pretty much everybody was an established actor, except this was Nikki Blonsky, who played Tracy Turnblad. This was her film debut. She didn't really go on to do much more. That. I think she did a couple other smaller things, but like this was her big thing, and everybody else was kind of a big name.
Seriously, this came out like so long ago, and she's only 2 years older than us, but like she's not done much since then, but she's only like 34, so who's to say?
And it was like I think it was a casting call. Like, we need somebody to fill this role. And she just happened to get it from what I remember. And she fills the role very well.
But otherwise, I mean, like Amanda Bynes had been huge on like all that and the Amanda Show before that. Christopher Walken for A Million Things. Zac Efron, they'd already done High School Musical.
He was in his High School Musical prime. Like I said, High School Musical 2 came out a couple months after this, or a month after this.
James Marsden, I believe he'd already done The Notebook around this time.
Yes.
Before that, yeah.
I think Notebook was like 03 or 4.
Yeah, Brittany Snow and a bunch of things.
Michelle Pfeiffer, Queen Latifah.
John Travolta had been in a couple things maybe before that.
Maybe.
Jerry Stiller. Just a whole lot of actors. I don't know if anyone really went on to do bigger things after this, like you said. What's her name?
Nikki Blonsky.
Nikki Blonsky. This was like her big thing. Wasn't really much beyond that. So I would say.
Can I also just say I really loved? Obviously, I've seen this movie a bazillion times, so I know everybody that's in it. But the first 5 minutes, he was like, "Is that Zac Efron? Is that?" Or you knew John Travolta? Like, is that Brittany Snow? Is that like so? Like, I mean, it was every time somebody new came on the screen, it was like, "Is that so and so? Is that so and so?" And I was like, "Yep." Packed cast.
I didn't say in the before show, but I was pretty sure that John Travolta was in this as a woman. I didn't want to embarrass myself though.
You know, I'm able to edit that stuff out.
But I was pretty sure. But anyways, what impact do you think this movie had on pop culture?
This movie particularly, I don't really think had a big impact. So I don't know if you know this, but it is based on a non-musical movie that came out in 1988. And then they turned it into a Broadway production, I believe in 2002, maybe. So I think the original was like probably pretty big and well known.
According to my quick Wikipedia research, you are correct.
Yes. Like I said, this movie is deeply rooted in my mind, that I think this movie, not particularly the original, obviously had a big impact because it was then turned into a Broadway show and very popular on Broadway. I don't know if I saw it in New York. I've definitely seen it either in off Broadway, or maybe I did see it when we went to New York. I've seen it in some capacity.
I've seen it live.
Yes. And I mean, I think it covers, very similar to Rent, a lot of very deep and heavy topics, and has its place in the cultural.
And I think like kind of talked about like this, just like not even decade, but like 5 year span. I feel like there were so many big musicals that came out with a lot of big star-studded casts, or I guess in the case of Rent, it wasn't necessarily as star-studded, but that I think this was kind of like a more of a look into what kind of movies were being made in the 2000s, like as musicals, covering heavy topics, a lot of big colorful dances on top of that, and I've heard a lot of people reference Hairspray and its soundtrack. That I feel, like, our next question, feel culture after watching it. Yeah, I feel cultured now that I know the whole story and can relate to when people mention the movie or the soundtrack itself.
And I mean, feeling cultured, it also kind of encapsulates a period of American history that, you feel cultured, getting a peek into. Obviously it's a little dramatized, but you kind of get a peek into being in that time and other things that people were going through, and can't help but feel cultured from that too. Yeah. I love this movie.
And so that's our questions.
Would you like to go first?
I will go first this week. My first note being that this was not all singing. We have seen or mentioned in the past about like I mentioned earlier, the balance of the singing to dialogue. In some of the earlier musicals we saw, it was so much dialogue, especially with Singing in the Rain, so much dialogue before you even got to the first song. This one felt like a very good mix. Like I said, I kind of prefer a lot of songs with a bit of dialogue to kind of give you a mental break and tie the story together when they need to kind of take a breather. The next note I had was all of the actors that I just mentioned that were in this, Anna Bynes, Christopher Walken, Zac Efron, etc. My next note was being the amount of hairspray they were spraying just on the the set they were showing for the
Corny Collins show.
I was like, so many CFCs. Just thinking back to like, you know, in the 90s, 2000s, just the big focus on like CFCs and all of these like spray aerosol products and the hairspray itself. And like they made a couple references like kind of coughing later on and like breathing it all in. But I'm like, I just did not love the idea of breathing all that in, especially just even thinking the ozone layer crisis and everything that kind of came.
Kind of on that similar note, I felt like this movie did a really good job of like making very obvious jokes that were still funny. Like they were all coughing when they were spraying the hairspray, or like the two women in the bar that were smoking cigarettes and drinking martinis that were very, very pregnant and kind of being like, oh, how glamorous. Like, or in the seatbelts hanging out of the car while the kids jumped around in the back, where you watch it in today's times and are so appalled or like, oh my God, I can't believe that would happen. But that was just of the time. And I feel like a lot of those jokes were really, really well done.
Yeah. I can't wait to see people's takes on like the 2020s and what our life is like, that we just like completely obliviously did things that were super detrimental, but I'm sure it'll be a lot. My next note being that this felt very much or very similar to American Dreams, the show that I think I mentioned on this podcast before, that we loved with Brittany Snow, and like they had American Bandstand on that show, but this had a very similar, the Corny Collins show, musical dancing thing, that I just got a lot of similar vibes from that from the very beginning.
And I think that's why I loved the movie so much when I saw it the first time anyways, because I'd watched that and then grew up living with a mom who watched American Bandstand in like the real time, and then watching American Dreams, and then seeing this, and just that idea of everybody gathering to watch the show. Obviously this is a little bit more local, and you know, the teens being these like idols, but like the dance and the music was just such, I think, a part of this time period. And having like, you didn't have iTunes or YouTube or whatever.
Or TikTok.
Yeah, definitely no TikTok, no smartphones to scroll through. That like this was your way of being kind of like in tune to culture. And I feel like that's just so interesting, because that's obviously not how things are now.
I love like the bit about them in the beginning, like rushing home to watch this, and they're sitting there trying to dance along to like what they're seeing on TV. And I can imagine like trying to pick up like little bits of like dance moves from all of these episodes you watch and trying to tie them together to like actually dancing. Nowadays, everyone kind of takes it for granted because you can look it up whenever, that I wouldn't even think to really do that anymore.
And so much of what you said, like rushing home, like you had to be home, because if you missed it, like you missed the beginning, or you missed whatever. Like,
and now everyone's doing that dance move tomorrow, and you don't even know, you never saw it. It
started at that time, and you needed to be home at that time to watch it. And then like you can't watch the YouTube video over and over again, or you can't like record it on your VHS to rewind and watch it again. Like you have to be home, and you have to just kind of pick it up as you're watching. And that's something that's not the case anymore. It's crazy.
So Brittany Snow, at one point when she was like making a joke, she mentioned CinemaScope, or making an insult. She mentioned CinemaScope, and I believe that's a topic we covered earlier on with like the Todd AO, like widescreen format. I believe that's what she was referring to with the CinemaScope, right?
So I don't actually know. I know of CinemaScope from this movie because they say it a couple times. And I think we were talking about it at dinner the other night about Technicolor. And I was saying CinemaScope, but I meant Technicolor because we had done Technicolor on this. That I don't really actually, I never looked up what CinemaScope was.
I believe CinemaScope was what I mentioned as the alternative to with Todd AO, where they had multiple cameras to do a widescreen format, versus Todd AO being the single camera to get that same shot.
So I guess she's saying we need that wider angle because you are bigger than all of us who don't eat anything.
Right. So I thought that was a very interesting way of like an insult, also tying back to what we've covered previously on Culture Night Pod.
Yeah, I was about to be like, do we need to behind the screens CinemaScope next week?
Maybe. And then my last note being that this movie was rated PG. And I thought that the topics covered and some of the content just seemed much like a lot beyond PG. Yeah, there wasn't really like cussing or nudity or anything like that, but just some of the like language used, especially in some of the topics, I felt was a bit darker than just a PG movie, that I think it must have been right on that borderline of PG-13, and they probably negotiated with the censors to say, we're going to keep it just below PG-13.
I think if this had come out in like 97, it would have been PG-13. Like if it had come out like 10 or 20 years earlier, it might have fallen a little bit more into that PG-13.
Or like,
but I kind of think we were kind of getting into the lower the rating, the more people that can watch this kind of era of like, let's make more money. Let's just kind of push it a little bit.
Or nowadays, even 15 years later, I feel like nowadays people are much more up in arms about anything they show on TVs and movies.
It's we live in weird times always. I don't know.
But that was just my last note was about the PG rating. Just seemed like it didn't quite fit, but I can see how they would have wanted to keep it below PG-13 just for larger audience.
And I mean, I do think if you are younger, you get caught up in the happy music and the smiling and the dancing and the pretty colors and the you kind of you're there for the deeper meaning, but you don't fully wrap your head in it. I mean, how many song lyrics did we sing as children that we had no clue what they were?
Exactly.
Until we were older. That so
many songs go over people's heads too.
And that this is so upbeat and cheery that maybe it was just like, we'll just get more bodies in the door.
Wow, they can sing, they can dance. This is fun. This is catchy.
Yeah.
Yeah. You look past it.
All right. You ready for me?
Sure.
All right. So my first note is, and I kind of continued throughout the movie, but the logistics of the first song of Good Morning Baltimore. So she's laying in bed and then she wakes up and she gets dressed and she's kind of like dancing through her house, and just how long it must have taken to shoot that whole scene, because she's in one room and then she dances to another room and then she dances to another room and then she dances out to the street and then she goes farther down the street and just
then she's on a dump truck.
Right. And she has to stop the dump truck and then she gets on the truck and then gets to school eventually. That I feel like that must have been such a pain to choreograph, first of all. And if you do one step wrong, then you've got to reset back so much farther and just, I don't know. I think
at least the ones singing and dancing, that was just her for that one as opposed to other more coordinated ones.
But I think having done this podcast for so long now, it's like you think a lot more about the behind the scenes things as opposed to just like, oh, I'm watching this movie and she's singing the song and just like going about her day. But it's like the amount of things that would have to be reset every time is just wild. Yeah. And I mean, I'm sure it was obviously not one continuous take, but it was a lot of, especially, houses nowadays are a lot more open floor plan and a lot more, big open spaces, whereas the houses in downtown Baltimore in the 60s are these very small divided places. So you're kind of confined to the smaller spaces. I think
back to what you covered though with Grease and the hand dancing, whatever thing that they did. They had to so many takes for it. At least with this, it was just one person, and they have kind of the digital advantage of saying we can quickly see whether or not you hit it right, or we can edit it later and fix it in post. Might hopefully went a little bit easier than trying to coordinate 100 people doing the exact same dance move in sync.
Definitely. I just definitely was interesting.
Yeah, definitely would have been interesting to see just a raw shot of that entire
or even just a piece of paper that someone was like, okay, we're gonna start here and then we need to pan to here and we need to do this, and just what that shot list looked like. Sure, that's super interesting. My next note is wardrobe with the heart eyes emojis. Ever since I first watched this movie, I have been obsessed with the wardrobe, just like the bright colors and the dresses. I mean, I am not one to wear dresses all day, every day, or ever, much to our 3-year-old's dismay. If it was up to her, I'd wear dresses all day, every day. But just the idea that you just wake up and you put on this, in my mind, this fancy dress every day, and you do your hair in this wardrobe is not something I would want to do every day, but it's just a very beautiful aesthetic, and just everybody's so well put together. And I mean, thinking about what people wear now,
all the hairspray, they're hiding all their imperfections underneath.
You're just so deep. But also just think about what you wore to high school. What did all the boys wear to high school, and all the sweatpants and the
t-shirt and shorts.
Yeah. And then, Link Larkin's wearing a suit to school. That is just such a different time period.
Yeah, I loved all the guys in the bathroom getting their hair ready and they're posed to get their hair slicked back, and just seemed so over the top.
Right. And I mean, especially in 2007, thanks mostly to Zac Efron, the longer swoopy hair. Justin Bieber was so in that this idea of having to always carry a comb with you so you can comb your hair back,
and the gel
is so wild. It's such a different time. And then, like you said, Zac Efron is an infant. Obviously, I went and saw this movie in 2007 because I loved him / still do. But it's just a little weird watching this being in my 30s. Just looking at him and being he is so little.
This is clearly before his like, I'm in Baywatch, I need to like get absolutely ripped out of control like phase, where it's like, yeah, I can see where he was like the teenage like heartthrob, but he looks so little, so dainty.
I feel a little creepy being like, I love you so much. But I know you look like much more mature and older now, but watching this in hindsight, it was a little alarming. I like texted a picture to my friends and was like, oh my God, I feel really creepy.
But I feel like how much longer between this was like that awkward moment? That was like
14? I think it was 14.
It
was either 13 or 14 because I feel like I saw it in grad school.
So a good deal after that. Okay. Yeah. He does seem a lot older in that movie.
Yeah. 6 years at that age in life is a big difference. And I don't know if you noticed, I did not point it out while we were watching, but when they pan down the street of Baltimore before they cut over to her dad's joke shop, there is some business that has Acme in the title.
I did not see that.
And I was going to pause it and have you rewind it, and I felt like too much work, but there was another reference to that. We're just kind of filling in background stuff here. Acme. Oh
man, I missed that. No, I did see the Domino's Sugar, like factory, whatever. I did not see the Acme, but man.
Yes. I was like, oh, and it was super quick. And I think like, I don't know how I saw it. I've obviously seen this movie a million times and never noticed anything like that, but just a fun little callback to our Acme research.
Yeah.
And then I feel like we need to talk about John Travolta a little bit, especially because we have done Grease in this season, and to go from Danny Zuko, basically the Link Larkin of the time, to Edna Turnblad is quite a character arc for John Travolta.
Yeah, I need a lot more like breakdown on that. I don't know why.
I can tell you that Tracy's mom is always played by a man on Broadway or wherever. Like I think in the original movie, I think it was I don't know why, but it has always been played by a man. When I saw it on Broadway, it was.
I think I'd heard that. I still like don't fully get it, but I also was thinking halfway through or like very early on, I guess after seeing the character, was it would have been well cast if they had picked what's her name that was in White Lotus and Legally Blonde.
Jennifer Coolidge.
Yeah.
She could have done pretty good too.
Jennifer Coolidge would have been a great like cast to play an actual woman there, and I think she could have really crushed it.
Yeah, I can see that. But I will say, I feel like he does a really good job. I very much buy it.
Yeah, but he also had like a weird, like Lorne Michaels, like /
I think it's supposed to be that Baltimore,
Farley, like he was trying to
Baltimore accent.
Maybe it didn't really land well.
The accent is a little weird. Also, I've seen this movie so many times that I think that he is that character to me. And even watching Grease was kind of hard for me because I had seen Grease before this. Like I was not that uncultured as a child, but he just so much is this role to me now that it is hard for me to watch John Travolta act in anything else because this was so much a part of that like teenage years for me that it's weird.
He's just become such a like larger than life person that I can't even like imagine like him being an actual human at this point. But it just felt kind of weird. Like I said, it felt like Chris or John Travolta playing Chris Farley playing Lorne Michaels, like trying to.
It's a weird arc, but it tracks.
I just couldn't really like take him seriously, and I guess also knowing that this is John Travolta playing this, it kind of killed it for me. I wish they'd either like come up with like some more unknown person or just had Jennifer Coolidge like play it.
I very much can see Jennifer Coolidge doing a really good job with the role, but
so if they remade it today,
but I also just having before I even went into this, I knew that character was always played by a man. That kind of it just was what it is. And then I made another note: the more songs to dialogue than I remember. Just and I kept being like, oh, like I love that song, and then I was like, oh wait, we're already going into this next song. I was not prepared for this, and.
I love that like moment where you can tell that like they're quickly cutting into the next song and they kind of like pause. You hear like the note of like
So that's kind of the end of my written notes, but I just want to talk about the soundtrack for a second, and not necessarily just the soundtrack, but just like the style of music of that time, and it's obviously very different from what is currently popular and what was popular in 2007, but it just has this like
makes you want to dance,
like upbeat, like happy, comforting feeling. And I just love it so much.
I know. I kept thinking like, man, I wish I could dance like that. Or just like, obviously all of these songs are very well choreographed. But I'm like, man, it's so cool. Like they've got these songs going on, everyone's just dancing and like hopping in. Like it's so cool. That doesn't happen in real life, but very cool.
I kept being like, so like little Inez is just jumping in at the end because Link Larkin was like, come on in. And they can just like both just dance together to the song, and you just know how to like what the other is going to do. I don't know. It's crazy.
Yeah. It'd be nice if everyone could do that.
Yeah. But on that same note, I also have my DVD copy that I hid from you because I didn't want you to see who I was in it. I wanted you to be surprised. But I went out. I'm pretty sure the DVD for this came out after I had my license because I did not have my driver's license when this came out. But once the DVD came out, I feel like I remember going to Walmart on my way to school to buy this DVD so that after school, I had to have it at school so you
could show all your friends.
After school, I could go home and watch this. But don't worry, I spent the extra money to buy the 2-disc Shake and Shimmy edition.
What does it even mean?
It has a sing-along with the movie using the lyric track. It also has step-by-step dance instructions, which you best believe I spent hours learning and still like kind of know to this day. I thought I knew more than I did, but watching it, I was like, yeah, I don't really fully remember this. And that's all other like the classic DVD extras that we've talked about.
I should have made you dance all these like while they were.
I'm shocked you didn't, because as soon as Lady's Choice came on, I was like, I know the dance to this. And I was expecting you to be like, okay, show me. And I was like, well,
I've been training my whole life for this moment.
If you don't ask, you're not going to get to see it. So my classics and I will put these on our stories, but this is just for you on YouTube. It comes with this where you can punch out Tracy's face and put it over your face. And like, here's her. I still have her face in here.
That's so creepy.
Right. And then the insides, like in nowadays, like you said, this was before Twitter. On the insides, it's instructions. It's like detach Tracy's face, attach to a close-up picture of yourself, blah, 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 and display your Hairspray photo frame for all the world to see. Now it would be like, use hashtag blah, 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 or like hashtag Hairspray, whatever, to share your photo.
Official Hairspray fan code on the back there.
Where I could win a trip for 4 for Carnival Cruise Line.
There you go.
But it was just like, I hadn't opened a DVD case in a while, and I opened this morning, and I was like, oh my God.
I'm still so nostalgic for like the DVD era of just, obviously like VHS was cool.
And like this is a 2-disc.
You never knew what you were going to get.
Right.
What DVD extras? Is it going to be a game? Is it going to be some dance lessons? Is it going to be just a commentary track? You never know.
And you made fun of me earlier because you were like, do we have access to this movie? And I was like, well, worst case scenario, we have the DVD. And you kind of rolled your eyes, but I'm like, now don't you want to watch all these DVD behind the scene extras? There's some good stuff. The Roots of Hairspray, Hairspray Extensions, breaking down the dance scenes. You Can't Stop the Beat, The Long Journey of Hairspray documentary. There's gold.
We're going to be busy for the next week.
You know what we're doing. So anyways, I just had to bring that up because I love it so much.
All right. Well, that wraps up, I think, Hairspray.
Yeah, you can cut me off.
Yeah. Obviously, there's a lot more to unpack, and I can't wait to see what your deep dives entail for next week. And we can also cover CinemaScope on the behind the screens.
Yeah. So stay tuned to see what we come up with and what I dive from the vault of my brain, let alone the internet, because I do know a lot about this movie.
Don't go too deep. But follow us on YouTube and Instagram
at Culture Night Pod. If you have any questions or comments or things you want to see us do, we are getting close to the end of a season. So if you have suggestions or thoughts, you can always email us at culturenightpod@gmail.com. And if you are enjoying the podcast, wherever you are listening to it or watching it, make sure you subscribe or rate and review. And we'll catch you next week for another musical.
Yep.
I think we maybe have one more. So cheers for one more week.
Cheers.